Okay, I'm going to continue on with 5.3. I'm going to do number 59. Okay, number 59, the problem is 12 sine squared x minus 13 sine x plus 3 equals 0. And in the problem they say limit your answer for the range of 0 to 2 pi. Okay, so we're just going to do sort of one revolution of the circle. When we look at this, our first objective is to see if it's factorable, but there are no two numbers that multiply to 36 and add to negative 13, so we cannot factor it. If we can't factor it, we have to do quadratic formula, and the way you do quadratic formula is we set a equal to 12, b equal to negative 13, and c equal to 3. And essentially the sine x is now going to equal the quadratic formula, plus or the opposite of b, so positive 13, plus or minus the square root of b squared, minus 4 times a times c, all over 2 times a. So we're just doing the quadratic formula here. When we simplify this, we get positive 13 plus or minus 5 all over 24. And we have two solutions here, with the plus and then with the minus. With the plus, it's 13 plus 5, which is 18, so it's 18 over 24, which is 3/4. And with the minus, it's 13 minus 5, or 8, so 8 over 24, which is 1/3. So our two solutions from the quadratic formula are 3/4 and 1/3. So basically the sine of x equals 3/4, and the sine of x equals 1/3 from these two answers. What you have to do now is make sure your calculator is in radian mode. So hit the mode button, make sure you're in radians. And what you're going to enter on your calculator is the sine to the negative 1 of 3 over 4, because this 3/4, there's not a special triangle. This is not a 30, 60, 90 or a 45, 45, 90. We don't have a triangle for this, so you do the arc sine. And when we take the arc sine of the sine, if you remember from last unit, the arc sine of the sine is basically going to give us the angle measure. So the arc sine of 3/4, if you do it on your calculator, you're going to get 0.841. If you do the arc sine of 1/3 on your calculator, you're going to get 0.3398. These are radian measures. And let me show you. When we look at our circle, this is 0. Remember, this is pi over 2, but in radians, that's the same as 3.14 divided by 2, because pi is 3.14. So that's 1.57 radians right here. And over here, this is pi, so this is 3.14. So we're just replacing pi with its actual decimal value. So we got 0.8481. That's somewhere in here. This is the 0.8481 answer. But because it's positive, we need the second quadrant angle as well that goes along with 0.8481. And you do it the same way as before. This time we're going to take and subtract pi minus 0.8481 to get the second angle that supports this particular equation, and we get 2.293. Similarly, with this answer, 0.3398. 0.3398 is also somewhere here in the first quadrant. We need the second quadrant angle that has that as a reference angle, so we'll do pi minus 0.3398, and we'll get 2.802. So our four answers for this problem are going to be 0.8481, 2.293, 0.3398, and 2.802. Okay, so that's how you do that. Let me do number 71 for you. In number 71, okay, the problem is the secant squared of x minus the 4 secant of x equals 0. We can factor a secant x because both terms have at least 1, so we'll factor out a secant x. We're left with secant x minus 4 equals 0. Now we set each parenthesis equal to 0. And when we do that, okay, we get secant x equals 0 and secant x equals 4. Well, secant x equals 0 is the same thing as 1 secant is 1 over the cosine. And when we flip the secant being 0, we're basically saying the cosine is undefined. Okay, the cosine is undefined when the secant is 0. So this yields no solution because it's undefined. So this does nothing for us in terms of solving. Secant x equals 4 is the same as the cosine of x equals 1/4. Okay, we basically flip secant into cosine and we flip the 4 into 1/4. So the answer for x, okay, is the arc cosine of 1/4. Okay, for the same reason in number 59, when we have something like this where we don't have the triangle to support us, we basically take the inverse function, in this case the arc cosine, or the cosine to the negative 1 of 1/4. Now where's the cosine positive? The cosine is positive in the first quadrant and the fourth quadrant. So our two answers are going to be x equals arc cosine 1/4 and x equals arc, the negative of arc cosine of 1/4. Okay, so here and here. We normally don't like to write our answers in terms of negative. So in terms of writing this as positive, we can basically rewrite it as x equals the negative arc cosine of 1 over 4 plus 2 pi. So that's basically saying go down to here, which is the negative answer, but then add 2 pi. So we're actually showing a counterclockwise or positive view of the angle. So your two answers here are this and this. This answer is technically not incorrect. It is the fourth quadrant angle where cosine is positive, so I'll probably accept that, but I want you to be able to match to the solution in the book as well. The reason they add 2 pi was because they like to define their answers in terms of positive angles. Good luck.